This crisis has hit women particularly hard.
Disproportionate impact of COVID on women in society is an epoch moment.
COVID-19 is deepening existing inequalities, including gender inequality.
COVID-19 has changed how we all live our lives, and it's changed how we work too, but particularly for women. They make up almost 40% of global employment, but account for more than half of the jobs lost because of the crisis. But what you might not have heard about is the disproportionate impact the pandemic is having on women who run their own business.
It changed overnight. I had to cancel some events and clients cancelled on me as well in real life. Still have things to pay for in my business and there was no income.
Lucy's story is similar to a lot of female entrepreneurs right now. Because of the nature of women-owned businesses, which tend to be smaller, home-based and provide a service, they're nearly 6% more likely to close because of the pandemic than businesses owned by men. Over time, women have faced loads of challenges which have set them back in the world of business. But COVID-19 and its economic consequences has slowed down or even set back gender equality in business that has been fought over for decades. So why is the pandemic growing the gender gap in entrepreneurship? What's being done to provide support and opportunities for women? And how would equality in business benefit the pandemic recovery? Long before COVID-19, far fewer women owned their own business compared to men, because historically entrepreneurship was a man's world. One study found more working-age men start businesses than women in nearly every country. In the UK right now, for example, only 1 in 3 entrepreneurs are women. So why the gap? Let's go through some of the issues. The first one lies at home.
Women still undertake the lion's share of childcare and elder care responsibilities. Those gendered stereotypes and expectations can impede women's progression in the workplace. And those barriers that women experience then in employment have a knock-on effect in terms of then their entrepreneurial activity.
Then there's the issue of accessing money to set up a business. In the UK, only around 9% of funding for startups goes to women-run businesses every year.
Those gendered stereotypes underpin unconscious bias and overt discrimination. Sometimes their potential customers might prefer to work with a man. And so there are issues in the marketplace there as well.
In many cases, when global events happen like the 2008 crash, it was male-dominated sectors like manufacturing and construction that were hit hardest. But with COVID-19, it's female entrepreneurs who suffered most.
I think with this pandemic, it is very different for a few different reasons. One is the fact that a lot of the sectors that were affected in big ways and indeed continue to be affected are the sectors that women tend to work in. It is accommodation and food services. It is the retail sector.
For many women, on top of managing work, there's managing the home too.
We've done surveys that have shown that women that continue to be employed today, women that continue to run businesses today, are experiencing higher degrees of mental health issues. They are struggling more to balance work in the home and work in the workplace. Women are experiencing this pandemic both in terms of the actual presence or participation in the economy, but even when they participate, it has been a more challenging experience for women.
That challenge is something business owner Lucy has felt this past year.
There's an assumption if you're working or running your own business and you've got children, you have got a team behind you, which is not always the case. Children were trying to get used to the fact that they were at home, husband working full time, and I'm trying to run a business from a corner of a bedroom.
So what's being done to help businesswomen like Lucy get through the crisis? Many governments have responded to the pandemic to help lessen its effect on the economy. Canada launched its women entrepreneurship strategy to increase women's access to the resources they need during the pandemic, including financing, networks, and training. In Somalia, the government has been assisted by Germany and the International Organization for Migration to help women entrepreneurs like Nasima.
laakiin hadda aan macluumaad ku ahay sida loo ganacsado marka hore maan aqoonin wixii aan gadayo ma qori jirin sida wixii iga baxo kale ma ogaan jirin wixii soo gala ma ogaan jirin laakiin hadda waxa sameystay buug maalinle ah.
Many business leaders and NGOs have also launched programs that are tailored to the needs of female entrepreneurs. Like in the UK, where NatWest has made a £2 billion female entrepreneurship funding available to lend to women-led businesses. And the Cherie Blair Foundation has designed new programs such as digital marketing skills for women to transform their businesses online. But experts say where possible, these emergency responses should integrate a gender lens.
As governments are putting forth any further proposals for a stimulus program, for example, job creation programs, ensuring that it covers the sectors that both men and women are employed in, the occupations that both men and women are employed in. That is sort of an underpinning philosophy that needs to be part of any recovery response.
But that's not always the case, which can lead to policies having unintended consequences for women.
In the UK, data shows that 39% of male-owned businesses were eligible for support under the Self-Employed Income Support Scheme. Only 29% of women-led businesses were eligible. Far fewer women were able to access those because of the size of their business when their business had been established, because they were running the business on a part-time basis.
So how could a more balanced business world benefit the pandemic recovery?
What happens to GDP in the future if women's participation stayed at the levels that it is today in the pandemic? And as a result of that, what we found was that global GDP in 2030 could be $1 trillion less than if we countered some of these gender regressive effects we're experiencing. On the other hand, we said, let's imagine an alternative world where we actually use the pandemic to enhance gender equality. And what we found was that if we take concerted action today to manage the recovery, to ensure that women's participation returns and indeed grows, global GDP could be $13 trillion by 2030.
But what specific actions can be taken to help get more women in business going forward? Step 1 is addressing the balance of looking after children and relatives, also known as the care economy.
In the same way as we think about things like transportation as a key part of infrastructure spending, we should think about childcare as a key part of how we design the infrastructure around us to ensure that both men and women have the opportunity equally to participate in the workforce.
Step 2, getting hold of money, because as we've heard, women entrepreneurs tend to have less access to financing.
How we better link women entrepreneurs to sources of capital and providers of capital, then also making a concerted effort to think about what an entrepreneur means in a very different way.
Now the pandemic has made work for many virtual. Having the internet and knowing how to use it is essential.
Globally, women have about 20% less access to the internet than men do. There's more that we need to do to ensure women both have access to the digital services, but also the literacy to use them.
And finally, it's about learning from the past and focusing on rebuilding a post-pandemic future that's fairer for everyone.
So we need to really think about how we address attitudes and norms, and governments can signal that in how they think about their spending. I think there's so much discussion right now about reinventing to this new normal. All of these are really important to advance women's entrepreneurship.